Okay, what I've done here is loaded up a young lady that was shot a few weeks ago as a senior portrait. And let's zoom in a little bit and see what we can do with some basic retouching. I'm going to first take a look at the eyes, and you'll see that there's a lot of redness in there, some blood vessels. And what we'll do is use the clone tool and set the diameter and opacity low enough so that we can sample a clean white area in the eye and then just clone over those red blood vessels. Make it a little smaller so we can fit in there a little bit better. And then sampling a spot over here on the left, we can go to the right and pull them out of the right side as well. Let's go over and take a look at the other eye. Same thing, we'll sample a white area right here, and then using multiple clicks, we will clone that white area over the blood vessels that are showing. And it cleans up the eyes, makes them nice and white without giving them a really bright, phony look. Now using the dodge tool, we'll go in there and we'll just enhance the catch lights a little bit. This is the main light, so we'll just dodge that specular, brighten it up a little bit. And then the reflector was down here, and just maybe enhance that just a little bit, just by dodging it slightly. And then we'll make the brush bigger and just lighten the eye a little bit as well with one single pass. We'll do the same to the left eye. Make the brush a little bit smaller, go in there and enhance those catch lights a little bit. And then using the burn tool, and we gotta make sure that all these brushes are soft edge. I had a soft edge, but I just wanted to show you which one I was selecting. We'll just darken the outer edges of the eye. This makes it a little bit more defined. And then we'll darken the pupil as well. And do the same to the right eye. And darken that edge. Just a little bit of burn. Exposure is at 11. And brush size is 17. But the brush size will depend on what size image you're working on. Now you can see she has some skin problems here. Right in the middle here we have, looks like might have been a chicken pox scar, so we'll eliminate that. And what Joy does is when she's taking the order, she'll ask what flaws or what features they want to have retouched. Sometimes they want all their moles removed. Sometimes they want to keep them there. Sometimes they say, well, we want them removed because we're going to have them removed at the dermatologist. So they'll have us retouch them from the picture because they're going to be gone anyway. But using the healing brush now, I'll just kind of move around the face, and I'll sample various areas. Like the healing brush will actually take a texture that you sample, and then we'll average the area that you're healing. So you sample a textured area nearby so that when you heal it, you get the same texture. And we'll just eliminate all these small little blemishes in here. And I'll start with just the minor things, some minor retouching, and then we'll go back and take it a little further and remove the moles and everything. Now here you can see we have some stray hairs here. Using the healing brush, just sampling to the left of the hair, we can erase it just that quickly. But if we get in too close, you'll start to see that as it averages the color, it starts to pick up the hair color. So then what we do is we just select the area to work on, which doesn't allow the hair to come into play. And now when we heal over it, you won't pick up the gold from the hair. Using the healing brush some more, we'll do some hairs and some more blemishes. And I'll pick up the texture from the right here. You can see there's a little bit of, looks like peach fuzz, so we want to pick up that and replace it in the areas that we're cloning. Now this is kind of a fun thing. I've mentioned this before. What we do is we take the cloning tool, and where you sample is very important. Notice that I sampled just upstream from the flow of the hair. so that when I clone it, the sampled area moves as well. And the dark and light lines continue on. So where you sample is the key to removing the hairs. Let's see if I can find another one. A little bit here, I will sample just to the right of it, and it just goes away that easy. And I probably wouldn't do them all, but some stand out and might be a little bit annoying and distracting, so I'll just kind of get rid of the ones that bother me the most. Now she's got a couple of hairs here that went crazy from her eyebrows, so we'll just clone those out. There's some blemishes here on the cheek. And go back to the healing brush for those. Just got some rough areas here on the chin. Now, as I said, she has moles, and a lot of times they'll ask us to remove them, so that's not an issue. You just use the healing brush and erase them just that easy. But you should always ask the customer before doing that, going ahead and doing it on your own, because sometimes they might feel bad if you took them out. Sometimes they'll complain that you took them out. So when in doubt, leave them in place. And we're trying to make her as close to perfect as we can. And it might be a sample print or a print that you might want to put on the website or something, so you want it to be as precise and perfect as possible. Oops, got away from me. Let's do that again. I'm just trying to separate the hairs here so that when I go in with the healing brush, I don't pick up the golden color in the average. Oops, like that. And we'll deselect it. And let's work on some of those hairs again. It's just slightly messy. We'll grab a clone and clone below the area, right here, and then watch how the area that I selected, which is the X, is now cloned upstream where I'm working. Now if I clone to the right or the left, it wouldn't work. It has to be in the same direction that the pattern is flowing. We got rid of those messy hairs just that quick. There's one up here. Same thing, we sample just up and move on the diagonal the same line that the hair is following. Here's some crazy ones up here. We'll do the same thing. We'll sample upstream, come down on that diagonal, the same line that the hair is following. And there's some out here, which you can use a clone tool, or you can go right on over and use the healing brush, which is just as easy. The trick is really where you sample and how often you sample. Now here I sampled on the line. And I'm just kind of doing this quick. Get rid of some more stray hairs here with the clone tool. Let's see what else we got. There's some crazy hairs that really stand out. Now I don't want to click as much, so I just went up and turned the opacity down so that fewer clicks achieve the same result. And doing multiple sampling frequently. I'm just pulling out some of these annoying hairs here. Again, on the diagonal that the leaf is on, sample just up or just down on the same line just follow it along. Sampling again, just up the leaf. Whoops. Brought the guide in, we're going to get rid of that. Back to clone, sample up. See what else we have here now. Here's a few on her arm along with some scratches. And healing brush will take care of those really quick. But we can't get too close to the hair or the edge of the arm because that's what happens there. Same thing here. I'm starting to draw in the dark color, so we'll just grab the selection tool and we will select that. We'll include this hair. Hit enter. And then using the healing brush we can heal it without picking up the color from the other side of the selected area. And we'll get rid of the selection. There's a little rough area there still, so with the clone tool I'll just soften that. Now sometimes there's some hairs that you sometimes want to keep, but you just want to subdue, so then I'll switch to the clone tool, and I'll turn the opacity way up again, and then I'll just kind of clone over them, but I'll leave them intact. I'll just darken them so they don't stand out so much. Let's see what else we got. We can go up here a little bit. There's a stray hair there. And now to sharpen, we can just sharpen the eyes a little bit using the spot sharpen tool. You don't want to overdo it. And I'll do usually her eyebrows a little bit too, just to see the individual hairs. That's pretty much done, but let's go on just for the sake of instructional purposes here. We're going to choose the crop tool because this is still in 35mm proportions, and I've got it set for 4 by 5, 350 pixels. And you'll see that because it's 4 by 5, it wants to do a vertical crop. And you could do that, just hit enter and it's cropped. But I want to keep the composition horizontal, so I'm going to switch it to 5 by 4, resolution 350 again. And we'll drag it and make a pleasing composition here. I'm tightening a little bit. And if we want to, we can even tilt it just by moving the mouse to the corner and dragging. And I'm going to tilt it just a little to go with the line and the paneling behind her to level things out. And she really has a great face and striking eyes, so we're going to move in really tight. That way her shoulder and sleeve doesn't distract. She's got a great face for a close-up. And using the arrow keys now, you can move it, you can nudge it to the right, left, up, and down to get it exactly where you want it. Hit enter, and you have the crop. Now, because we've come in so close, we may want to smooth that skin out a bit. This area is a little rough, and optionally, again, you just grab a big brush, set the opacity way down so it's almost transparent. Very little effect here. And we'll clone an area right next to where we're going to fix. And you'll see the X is the area I've selected, and the circle is the brush that where I'm working. And I'll run up and down the nose, soften the nose, soften the specular, highlight on the tip of the nose. And then this shadow, I'll pick a light area here and soften the shadow going up the side of her nose. Same here, she's got a dark area under her eye. I'll sample the light area on the cheek and just lighten up. We'll zoom in, and you'll see her nose is just slightly rough here. I'll make the brush a little smaller, and sampling the highlight, I'll start to spread it outward. It'll soften the highlight. Now I see she's got a little problem here, a little rough shadow, and this will just soften the shadow. And underneath her nose, she has just a little roughness too. And I'm just cloning I'm selecting an area very close to where I'm working and just offsetting it a little bit, which is all it takes to soften. Same here, just select, and you can see by the distance here of where the X is and the brush is how close I'm selecting. And this goes very quickly. I'm going a little slower here for the video so it's easier to follow along, but normally this just is frantic clicks and it takes only about half this much time. A rough spot up here on her cheek, a little bump there under her eye, a little bump there. And we'll just back up and look at it. And those eyes could use just a bit more work. What I have in the center here is my IR trigger that triggers my slaves has shown up in her eyes. So I'm just using the black airbrush tool and just removing that. It's a little teeny red flash, and when the slaves see it, it trips the main light and hair light. Now this shot is main light and hair light only with a reflector down low to add the extra speculars in her eyes. Now sometimes I'll grab a smudge tool and I'll smudge the hair to smooth it out. Now that was too much. So what I'll do is turn it way down. And you can sometimes straighten out messy areas of the hair by just dragging along and smudging it just a little bit. I do this a lot in Painter 7, which tends to do a better job. But it will just soften areas of the hair that have strays and hairs that are going in various directions. I don't do this very often, and if I do, it's usually because the hair is quite messy, and then I'll usually do it in Painter 7. I did this to the girl that was sitting in upside down in the chair with her hair flowing down to the white paper in the chair that looked like a shoe. And I actually smeared her hair in Painter 7 to smooth it out. Now I'm using the airbrush in a black color, and to make her face become more prominent, I'll just burn the edges a little bit with the black airbrush. Not too much, or you'll start to get the black color. Just enough to darken it. If you use just burn, you'll get kind of a banding, and the color will actually get exaggerated. You'll get an increase of saturation. So I'll usually start with a black airbrush first, and then I'll follow it with the burn tool. And you'll see that it just makes her eyes and her face just pop. Adds a richness. And going into the levels here. Now, this is the whites here, and what you want to do is if you go right to the edge of the graph, but if you go too far, you'll see that you'll start to blow out your highlights. So you want to be right about just shy of where the whites start on the graph. Mid-tones, bring them to where you get a nice tonal range, and the blacks again on the edge of the graph, which usually don't need much adjustment. Trying to think of what else we could do here for demonstration purposes. Let's bring up Selective Color. I'm going to get the palette here. There it is. And I'm going to select the reds. And sometimes I'll pull magenta out of the face by doing this. You'll see too much magenta. And just to subtract a little bit just makes the flesh more natural looking. Now in her eyes you'll see it's very slightly magenta, not much. Really doesn't need work, but I'll select whites and again pull the magenta out of those eyes just to make it clean. That is a clean white right now. I'll sometimes do that with the Selective Color. Now we'll resize it down. We're going to display this on PortraitNet, so we'll go to 72 res. And, oh, I don't know what size, maybe 850 to start. That's still a little bit large. I'll shrink it down a little more. Go down to 7. Now we can do a unsharp mask by going to filters. We can adjust the sharpness now that we've downsized it. It's gotten soft. So you want to do it to where it looks good and then turn it down just a little more. You don't want to go too far. Better to go not enough than too much. So it's like that's where it looks good. It's pretty good there. We still want to keep the skin soft. So we'll go under, and then to sharpen the eyes even more, we'll grab the Sharpen tool. And we'll just pass that over the eyes and eyebrows. This way we get the eyes where we want them as far as sharpness goes, but the skin doesn't become harsh and textured again. And let's shrink it down one more time. 600. Now another effect I've talked about is my softening technique. There's not much to it. You just duplicate the layer by dragging it down to the duplicate layer icon so that we have two of the same. And then we call up the filters, blur, Gaussian blur. And you just want a nice soft look like this. It's just a visual thing. Now we have a sharp layer on top, and the blurred layer is underneath. If we turn off the top layer so we can't see it, we can now see that she's blurred. We're seeing the bottom layer. If we turn that off, we don't see any layers. So they're both on now. We can only see the top layer because it was opaque, and we can bring it down and make it transparent, and now we see the bottom layer. So we're going to bring it back to 100%. We can only see the top, and now we're slowly making it transparent to reveal the blurred layer underneath. And it looks good, usually about 79–80%. And then I'll flatten the two layers to combine them into one. And then after we blur, sometimes it's nice to bring those eyes back one more time. And that's pretty much our finished image.